One of the coolest things about doing all my research for Play All Night, all my work on the Allman Brothers, I mean, it started with just the different music you would learn by discovering their influences, and then of course, you know, what went out from them. You know, like Derek Trucks band, Government Mule, they were all active like when I was first coming into the band. But I went back to listen to the jazz. Kind of Blue, my favorite things by Coltrane, Kind of Blue, Miles Davis with John Coltrane. Anyway, and I found this video that I recorded on Kind of Blue. Thought you might dig it. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Miles Davis's Kind of Blue is more than just the best-selling album in jazz history. It's also one of the most influential records to the Allman Brothers Band. Of their earliest song, Greg's song Dreams, which is my all-time favorite vocal track that they have, is the one that has the most clear jazz influence. J-Mo has called it at various times my favorite things with lyrics. And he's referencing, of course, that Rodgers and Hammerstein song from The Sound of Music that John Coltrane turned into an absolute jazz masterpiece on his album of the same name, My Favorite Things. More importantly, and pertinent to today, is the fact that the waltz time, it's actually waltz shuffle, it's in 6/8. I've been corrected on this a couple times. The shuffle beat, the waltz shuffle 6/8 time feel of the song is directly pulled from All Blues, from Miles Davis's Kind of Blue. And of course, Kind of Blue includes, in addition to Cannonball Adderley, the great Cannonball Adderley, of course, John Coltrane. I think it might have been Coltrane's last record with Miles. And J-Mo once told me, when I said he copped Jimmy Cobb's drum feel for the song, he said, I told Jimmy Cobb I didn't cop his drum part. He said it was the only thing that could be played on that song. Dreams itself, the studio version, reflects this whole jazz aesthetic in this song in several ways. One is this gentle 6/8 rhythm and a long improvised solo over just a 2-chord vamp. Duane called Dreams the effect good jazz had on us. Greg said we all really got into Coltrane together, which became a big influence, and that was because of J-Mo. We were listening to Jefferson Airplane and the Dead's records. We were all kicking around South buying records out of Kmart, taking them home and digging them, Duane said. And then J-Mo comes along and says, well, that's good, but check out what I got over here, this collection. And that just turned us all around. We heard what them cats were doing, knocked us out. Kind of Blue and My Favorite Things, Miles' album Kind of Blue, Coltrane's My Favorite Things, were the two favorites of the band. They referenced it all throughout the early era and really throughout their lives as these groundbreaking records. What Dickie says, it's like the blues background was right there, and then Roland Kirk, Pharoah Sanders, John Coltrane gave my music, Dickie's music, of course, that far out effect. Then adding the blues thing makes it a little more soulful than typical jazz music. Jazz became the bar for the band's musical aspirations. Here's what Duane said. Those jazz cats, Duane understood this shit. Those jazz cats catch the flow, so it's on a level, man. Like if you can ever achieve, you'll never be satisfied with nothing else. If you can get the music flowing out there where you don't have to listen to it, it just takes you away. That's the way we try to do it, and that's what we want to get out of it. J-Mo always points back to jazz. He said, to me, our songs were stretched out in the studio, and we were able to do more of that when playing loud. You think about the records King Curtis did, maybe back to the Woody Herman band or Duke Ellington's band. In those bands, various people took solos and the energy directed them to do so. It's the same way with us in a live setting. And then he says, while recording at Fillmore East, you went by what the song was dictating as opposed to thinking it out. We're going to do 2 verses of this, and we're going to do an 8-bar or 16-bar solo. The jams, Dickie said, followed a jazz formula. They were structured to the point where we know where we went first and who went first, But what was going to happen in the middle of it, we never knew. I liken it, this is Bob saying this, I liken it as you've got a road map, you've got a beginning and an end where you want to be, but the journey is in jazz or in playing with the jazz aesthetic is determined by a multitude of other factors. How you're feeling at the moment, honestly, how comfortable you are on your instrument. Sometimes it's everything from something you see or something that happened to you earlier in the day, the vibe in the crowd, the vibe on stage, frankly, how you're getting along with your bandmates. All of those things play into the moment, which is what J-Mo and the Allman Brothers Band always talked about. It's the jazz aesthetic. What's going on in the moment, and play
play through that. These are things they learned from listening to Miles Davis and Kinda Blue. Here's another killer quote from J-Mo when talking about song length. With whatever amount of space you have to do something, he said, Coltrane said, that's what you have. And the ability to do that just shows a mastery of knowing what you're doing, how to develop it, and how to play a song. This is the formula the Allman Brothers Band really mastered on at Fillmore East. Now, if we were sitting down rapping or just chilling, listening to music, I might point out some of the specific connections as I heard them early. But I knew all of this information that I just gave you about about Miles Davis and jazz and how it impacted the Allman Brothers Band. I had read all of this very early, and when I was a fan and discovering all these things. And I remember I got Kinda Blue, and I remember listening to it and being like, man, I don't hear any Allman Brothers in it, you know? And of course I didn't, right? Because it was the opposite. You would hear, I should be hearing strains of Kinda Blue in at Fillmore East, because that's how, you know, influences work and then manifest themselves out. I wouldn't hear any Allman Brothers necessarily in their forebears as much. It's the adaptation that happened. And at some point, that little factor just clicked with me. I wasn't listening to listening to Kinda Blue, hoping to hear at Fillmore East. I was listening to at Fillmore East, and I'm pretty sure it was during Liz Reed. And it was like, okay, now I hear what they talk about when they talk about Miles Davis and or John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, and the influence of these records here. Just about that time that I had that little, you know, breakthrough, which is kind of silly to say sometimes, when I made this connection, the reissue of Kinda Blue came out, a reissue, 1997 reissue, and the great Robert Palmer, incredible storyteller of Southern music, everything from it actually being and playing in the same Roadhouse circuit that Duane, Greg, and all the Allman Brothers played in, to writing Deep Blues, one of the really great books about blues history, to being a New York Times critic, Rolling Stone writer, Robert Palmer, just great. And I used the shit out of him in my book, Play All Night, on Duane Allman and the journey to Fillmore East. And he, probably one of the most meaningful pieces is the one I'm about to share with you. And what's interesting, my friend Steve, and shout out Steve, mentioned this to me years ago when we were reflecting on this, because we were so proud of how well he captured Duane in this piece. He said, you know, you kind of forget when you're reading it that you're reading liner notes for a Miles Davis album. So here you go. Here's what he says in the liner notes. The one group I never missed at Fillmore East was the Allman Brothers Band. More specifically, I went to see their guitarist. Duane Allman was the only rock and roll guitarist who could solo on a one-chord vamp for as long as a half an hour or more and not only avoid boring you, but keep you absolutely riveted. That kind of playing comes from Miles Davis and John Coltrane, in particular Kinda Blue, he said. I listened to that album so many times for the past couple years, I hardly listen to anything else. Miles Davis, Kinda Blue, John Coltrane, jazz, the Allman Brothers Band. Long live the Allman Brothers Band.
Bonus content. This is me actually going over how they adapted all blues into Dreams.
So Greg Allman brings in a song called Dreams in essentially 4/4 time. And somehow the band decides they want to change it to waltz time, which is 6/8. And they're listening to this album by Miles Davis, and really this song all is blues. And so this gives the vibe that they want. I'm going to play that first. I'm going to play the Allman version. Just for a second. All right? Flowing with it? Now, here's kind of how the Allman Brothers adapt the form, the feel. And by the way, J-Mo's drums, which are going to be panned, I think, left, he's literally doing the drum lick from All Blues.